Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm feeling mischievous because I have evil science that could help save us all. And I'm feeling smug because I guessed a lot of things right. Boy.
Well, you do that a lot, so you get to be smug quite a bit.
How about you? Are you feeling mischievous, evil scientist, smug?
We're traveling the road.
Okay, we're traveling the road. People, in case you have not listened to this podcast before, we are Podcast, a husband and wife team who drive across the country watching science fiction television, and we record every single episode while we're driving. That's correct. Is that dangerous? Who cares? Because it's more important to hear two people go in depth on their opinions on a piece of science fiction television. And we are watching for the first ever time, that's right, the first ever time, The Expanse. And we're just making our way into season 2. We are in the early days, and I hope you enjoy what you hear from us and what we have to say about the beloved, the revered series that is The Expanse as we explore it one at a time. Rachel, you know why we're called Yum Yum, so please could you just remind everyone why we're called that and not the Blue Goo podcast?
Well, because you're no fun. You're no fun. And even though they directly called it Blue Goo last episode, you didn't uphold your end of the bargain and change
the name of this podcast to Blue Goo podcast?
Yeah. I think we should do it at least for The Expanse.
I'm going to set up an email, bluegoopodcast@gmail.com. And if somebody emails us saying, I demand that you change the name of the podcast to Blue Goo Podcast, I'll consider it. But we're actually called Yum Yum Podcast because of what reason again?
Because of Star Trek Discovery being a shit show and you loving it because it was so ridiculous. In season 2, gone are the days of actress and Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh proposing murder and an individual being paid to respond with yum yum.
I don't think those days are necessarily gone. She's an actress that plays a lot of badass roles. I'm sure she's asking people if they want to help murder somebody. The yum yum part of it is the key here. And what is so brilliant about it is it's out of nowhere and it's very sexual in nature. And that brings us on to our next part of the pod, where we are going to get into the discussion of this episode of The Expanse, Season 2, Episode 2, Doors and Corners. The description, according to IMDb, is brilliant because it's quick and to the point. Holden and crew stage a dangerous raid in search of information about the proto-molecule. And in this episode of The Expanse, what did you find to be particularly arousing? Something that made you want to lick your lips, throw your hair back, and say yum yum like that character in Star Trek Discovery. I know what it was for me, but I'm keen to hear what it was for you.
I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you, please. You got me excited. I don't know what your pick is. I want to hear it.
We cut to a scene in a bar.
Yes.
And we see her enter, Ava Solaru. We see Chris Jen enter in one of the most gorgeous outfits ever.
You mean the point where I was like, she's fucking banging.
Stunning was the word you used to describe. And her throughout that entire scene was just smoldering.
Yep.
I was Oh, I was sweating from how much she was just burning off of that screen into my soul. I just thought that scene was just amazing. And it was that type of arousal in which it's just, this is such a well put together thing. They've got her in this amazing outfit, and that actress is getting to play up being a bit more cocky and a bit more snarky, and I was just here for every single moment of that. Now, for you, what was it?
It was the bar scene as well. Like, she is smoldering, and the vulnerability that is with that cockiness, I find extra sexy. And then, of course, I have my Amos moment.
Oh, do you have one? I didn't think he was that sexy in this, but what did you get?
But getting to see him hang on and use the grav boots to try and hold on during a G-force maneuver was pretty great. And also his delivery of the line, like, I've got to go, or like, I'm going.
I'm going.
Okay.
I see it, inner hole, C9. I can patch that.
Amos, stay pump. One hot maneuver and you're done.
We'll get that thruster back and we're all done. I'm going.
As we are going through this for the first time, we didn't really know what we were going to be getting into with this episode. We made some predictions, we had some thoughts, and having just watched it a moment ago, we don't know what one another thinks of the episode. So let's just touch base on that. Some just quick thoughts on this. For myself, I liked it. I didn't love it as much as the previous episode. There was more in the season 2 premiere episode that I gravitated towards. Some really great character moments, as well as action and suspense and setting up the stakes for the season to come. But when it comes to the second episode, it was great in following up on what we were given in the previous. It didn't have as many of those wonderful character beats that I liked, but the action was really well done, and the things that it is propelling forward intrigues me, as well as giving me answers to things is always satisfying, especially if they're things that make sense, and or it's that style in which the audience was able to put this together themselves along the journey. As I stated very much at the beginning, I feel a little smug because I had some theories about the proto-molecule that were confirmed at the end of this. But overall, I enjoyed it. Not as much as the previous. What about you?
I did not connect very much with this episode. I think for me, it was like things are happening because things need to move forward, but I wasn't particularly invested in any of the plots other than some specific scenes where I was like, oh, I really like this because it's slowing down and focusing in on the characters in the midst
of it,
yeah. Like the Holden and Naomi scene as well. Like the bar scene really stands out, as do most scenes with Avasalara.
Oh yes, with her, yes.
But that was my main thing of like, it's doing its job. It's doing its job. That's why I was just like, we're on the road. We've gotten in the car for season 2 and we're on the way.
And we're sure that the destination will be reached and they know how to drive the car. I understand what you're saying. I enjoyed the UN side of the story. It was minor in comparison to last episode. There was only a handful of scenes here, but each one of them was brilliant and really well done. And the thing that I connected with the most, because I do feel that disconnect with that disconnect you're talking about, because there's a lot of information given. This is a lot of, here's information, here's an answer, here's some questions, here's a piece of world building. But what I really vibed with was Miller. His story and what he was given made me very much engaged, because it was an underdog tale while also utilizing what he is supremely skilled at.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. And I enjoyed what we were given, but I really felt the strings of the writers pulling the strings with that, of like, oh yeah, well, we have this big thing that's happening. We have these different perspectives. It wouldn't make sense for Miller to be on the ship, and he says as much. And we know that we need a ground assault, so he's going to go with them.
Yes, it's functional.
Yes. That doesn't make it bad. And it isn't something that, like, I think people who aren't engaging with it as critically as we are would feel. It would just be like, oh yeah, and Miller does this. But I was like, oh, okay, they've shuffled Miller in here for these purposes, and it has this impact, and it's probably going to set up these things. Like, I saw everything in this episode coming from a ways away.
Yeah, and I think a part of the struggle is this particular one had lots of little stories, or lots of little...
So it's moving everything forward just
strands.
A little bit.
Every character practically gets a thing to do, and since that is the case,
Fred Johnson, Alex, Avasarala,
Amos,
Holden,
Naomi. Yes, we can go through the cast.
Like, it's every single character in the main cast, as well as some secondary characters. Because we all, like, I wouldn't consider Fred
a main
character, and we have Diego.
Oh yes, the rock hopper, is that his name?
Yeah, I think so. And Eve and the general.
Yeah, General Souther. Yeah. I what I was trying to grasp at with this particular story and why some of it didn't work is, you said it. You can determine where it's going to go, and you have to wait for it to get there, because we have 6 other little stories to fill in until we can touch base with that. Miller, I liked it a lot because I did understand what it was going to be, and it was something where, and I love when this happens in a show, when you are given the storyline of a character and you smack your hands together and go, baby, I love that, and this is going to be excellent. You know it because it's something that caters to your sensibilities, and this was definitely one for me. And this is such a far cry statement from where I was in season 1, which
Hatless Miller is better.
Which is to say, could have used more time on Miller. In season 1, they had the 3 storylines would cycle through, and usually Miller and Holden's took up the most screen time. Here, Miller is very, 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 very far down until the end of the episode.
So what's the plan, boss man?
All right. Split them up into 4 groups. 5 of you guys come with me. Stay sharp. Everybody stay sharp and watch the doors and corners. Doors and corners, where they get you.
Let's go into the UN first, because they only have a couple of things happening, same with Christian. And I adored the direction here. It was so brilliantly done, and every actor, from even the people we really don't know, there's certain military figures, there's this warmongering admiral character, we have the Secretary General of the UN is there. Everyone is living and breathing their roles, right down to just a glance of the eye to another character. I believe them.
Yeah, and you get the sense that these people have known each other a long time as well, without a sense of intimacy to it. These are work colleagues. They are not friends. They are not intimate. They do not care about each other. They are there for a function. And that's what they're there for. And you got to play the game to stay in that room.
The admiral who's in charge of the command fleet, the fleet command, he does refuse to play the game, but it touches on an aspect you were just going through, which is everyone here is here to do their job, but everyone has their own agenda. Everyone has their own thing to play with. And that's what I really liked about the introduction scene when it came to this story, which is Aaron Wright. It's just glances and expressions, not even the dialogue. It's just telling you what a shitty guy he is, and that he is playing the people in the room, and he's trying to stir up those emotions, and he is reveling in his success at doing that by just interjecting one statement and cutting over to Christian and seeing her concerned, but then realizing that she is expressing concern via her facial expressions and having to hide that so no one notices. And people do notice, as the Admiral has pointed out, and to see her having to try and snap back and make Aaron Wright feel comfortable in his position, and she flicks over this very vital piece of information to him because the UN are wanting to strike back, or they're wanting to
back down. They see it as Mars has done this act of aggression. We must at least equal that act of aggression.
An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. Even though there hasn't been a direct confrontation, shots have been fired in some way, so we must fire some shots back.
Restore the balance. At least, like, they're still kind of in that zone of, like, war is probably not a good idea, and we should maybe try and avoid it, but we cannot let it seem like Mars is the greater power. That's unacceptable.
Or the victim. We need to make it so that Mars is cornered and they lash out, and it's them who started it. Christian flicks over this information to Aaron Wright about this important base of operations for Mars that would be valuable to take. And even before we get told what it is, I was so overjoyed by the expressions these two gave each other. They gave each other some fuck me eyes look to one another when she flicked it over, and he just dawning realization, and he gave her a look of, Chrissy.
Ooh,
oh,
you naughty vixen.
Oh, you're at it again, Chrissy. And she just returned the look with, yeah, I did it. Are you going to say it for everyone else to hear? Oh my. I know that these two are enemies, really, but I really wish that we could see, or could have seen, what it was like when they were on the same page wholeheartedly, because these two actors work so well. I'm so glad that Sean Doyle is getting more to do in the season, because last one, we knew him because of his work in Star Trek Discovery, so we gave him a lot more attention than the series itself was, and he was having to play cold bureaucrat. Now he's getting to, I don't want to necessarily say ham it up, but he's getting to indulge in a little bit more villainy in the character of Aaron Wright, and I love it. I really love this character. I just love that he's a shitty whipping boy for the corporation, and he doesn't like it, but he's going to do it, and he's good at it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. This whole sequence is him really proud of what a piece of garbage he is. So good. So good. Now, when it comes to the UN and they're going to take this base because Aaron Wright proposes this idea, and everyone in the room seems to say, yeah, that's brilliant. Let's just do that. Even the Secretary General gives the,
we'll get that passed through. But
we won't agree on this right now. I'm going to put up this faux pretense of not being on board with it, but I'm actually on board with it. The real diplomatic way of saying, let's kill people. But the Admiral that we like so much, who I haven't heard
he refuses to toe the line.
They haven't said his name on the show. I think I saw it on IMDb because I was just looking at the cast, and I think they said his name on IMDb. But that's the weird thing about The Expanse. There's so many characters, they just don't say their name out loud. Maybe you'll see it in writing, or if they do, they wait a while. I find that frustrating because I just want to know characters' names, especially him, because he's one that I've liked since the beginning. He's been a minor recurring character, and they've given him more attention. But he refuses to participate in this bloodshed, to instigate a war, to play dirty politics. He is done with it because he has principles, he has morals, and he will not bend, he will not break, and he refuses. And he even refuses to engage with their pomposity of oh, well, if you're going to do that, then that means you're going to, let's just cut through the bullshit. I resign. I step down. I'm out.
Yeah, like, don't pretend that this is a question. We know what's going on here. Like, the fact that he refuses to play the game in that moment. He's just like, no, I'm calling you out on your bullshit, and they keep on trying to do things the way that they do things. And he's just like, no, I'm fucking dumb. I'm done.
They're trying to minimize what they're doing. They're trying to obfuscate it, dress it up, make it seem less hostile than what it actually is, less human than what it is. Because what they're doing is immoral, but they don't care, and so they're going to use this flowery way of talking. And so he stands up and refuses. He says, I'm no longer going to be the fleet commander. I step down. Hand it over to somebody else. I'm washing my hands of this. What did you think of that? Because we have been noticing his character and how, for somebody who began as an entity to give exposition, he has slowly been blossoming into someone with worldviews.
And a very important perspective to highlight the changes in Avasarala's character as well as presenting a different worldview on these issues. And that's always been very consistent, which is something that I appreciate. And I think that that's a sign either way of doing the writers doing a good job, but that might be that they've built him up and they know the purpose of him, and or using the books as a resource to build up and build out these other characters so that they feel like real people in a real world.
And to make it, when you shake up the status quo, to actually have it feel meaningful, because I now am actively aware of the horror that the UN can bestow upon the system now that the one guy who has been logical, rational, speaking from a place of military perspective that isn't just kill, 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 annihilate, destroy. The one guy on the side of Earth who is trying to advocate for peace has stepped out, has said, I'm not doing it anymore. You are going to bring reckoning upon us all, and it is on you. I'm going to try and minimize the body count. That's where I live now, because you guys are damned. I find that very exciting to watch in the show, to see how this is going to unfold. When he did stand up and he refused, what was your reaction to that and the fallout of it within the episode?
I was a bit surprised at first. And then I was like, good on you. Good on you for actually standing up for what you believe in and refusing to justify staying in a awful situation. In an awful situation where you are trying to do the right thing and nobody's listening to you, and not being like, oh, I can fix it from the inside, but being like, no, that's it. I'm done.
I worry for him because The Expanse has definitely shown us within this season and a bit that the ones who succeed, the ones that thrive, are those who can adapt, those who can bend. And he cannot. He does not bend. He is firm. He is rigid. He is staunch in his opinions. And thankfully, they're ones that we, the audience, see as good. But even right down to what he likes to drink, he doesn't bend. He gives. We cut to the scene in a bar where he's drinking beer, and Chris Jen comes in and they share some barbs at one another, and it's just this little touch of she insists that he should drink scotch because
that's a proper drink.
That's a proper drink, and you're an officer. You're a high-ranking member of the military. You drink scotch. He gives it a sip. He doesn't like it. I prefer my beer. She'll pay. Even right down to his preferences on what he likes to drink, he's very adamant on. And he will oppose other options.
He was a hero to Earth and despised everywhere else, all based on a lie. But you know what? He never said a word, didn't even try to clear his name. Just walked away.
So does that make him a hero or a traitor?
I don't know what it makes him. But I know that he's an honorable man who held on to his soul, and that is a tough thing to do in this line of work. Not bad. But I prefer beer. She's buying.
So we find out that according to a source that this general trusts, the UN hid the truth from Fred Johnson. That they didn't let him know that the people who had taken over Anderson Station were trying to surrender. And that they had sent out that message, which we got to see last season.
Yeah, they said the idea was Earth was jamming their communications and they were able to receive them, but Fred Johnson and his group weren't receiving those messages. As far as they knew, these terrorists were holding this station and refusing to bow down.
Yep, and he probably wasn't told why they were doing it, which we know from the footage that we got to see last season. Which I really appreciate the decision to make those flashbacks the further we get into the show. It feels really important that we got to see Johnson reacting on the station, and that you can project a lot of things onto that expression that we saw him have.
The "I have become death" expression makes more sense now, because what the Admiral goes over is if Fred Johnson did know, he would not have done it, because he
wouldn't
has
have followed that order.
morals, and he has a conscience, and he has a soul. And so
something that, like, you know, playing in this world, keep on using the expression playing the game,
but being somebody of importance in the universe of the Expanse,
has a
you
cost.
have to. They expect you to be soulless, to be like the Mao family, or to be like Aaron Wright, where
people acting like corporations and corporations acting like people.
Hence, this Anderson station got butchered in the first place because they were costing the corporations a bit of money.
Yep, they were inconvenient, and it was a way to put the boot on the belters.
And so
and look justified doing
it. That was covered up and swept under the rug by the previous people in the UN, and it has been perpetually covered up. And so Fred Johnson eventually found this out, and this was the avenue that they took that I wasn't expecting. So I was wondering, as were you, how did he leave? Why would he leave? Now, I didn't expect this particular information to come, but the thing that I also found it a bit devastating was, once he knew, he didn't try to clear his name. He didn't try to...
He just stepped away. He walked away from it all.
He received these accolades knowing, and then he just walked away because he still wanted to hold on to his soul. And no matter how much he tries to explain himself, it means very little in comparison to actions. And we have seen Fred Johnson actively portray himself as somebody who is on the road to redemption without expressing with his words that, oh, I was innocent about that Anderson station butchering, because he isn't innocent. He still did pull the trigger. He still did kill those people. Now, if he knew what was going on, he wouldn't have, but he didn't, and he did do it. And there's a level of ownership you have to take when it comes to that, because you still
change it. He can't go back and change what he did and the way that it ended.
And to just throw your hands in the air and throw blame to the powers that be will get you nothing. It will only bring devastation upon you. So, instead, turn over to the OPA and help them and strike back. Use your knowledge, your expertise for something quote-unquote greater. And then that brilliantly pivots us over to Fred Johnson, who's back in the episode. Like, he's back in this show. We haven't seen him in a little while. And he was strange to me in this episode. He was very wired as a character. The actor was playing him very differently to how we saw him last season, where he was very calm and reserved and together.
The voice felt different to me. Like, it felt like it had a more
manic,
stern quality to it as well. Like, the analogy that I'm going to go with to try and explain the quality of the voice performance, because it very much feels like a very deliberate
Oh, yeah.
choice. It's kind of like, the explanation of like how atoms work. It's like they're on this tiny level and they're bouncing around and humming with energy. Feels like every cell in his body is vibrating and he's trying to contain it and stay still. So it just feels like he's a can of soda that's been shaken up real good and it's just sitting there and you can sort of hear it and you feel this tenseness, but there's nothing on the outside that's giving it away. There's not the look of the thing. It's the feel, it's the weight, it's the sound.
I was wondering if there was a change in the way to play the character in between the seasons, whether the actor decided it or somebody came over and said, we need Johnson to be more like this, whether it is for the sake of the show or we got to be more book accurate because nerds care about that. But what was actually going on, in my opinion, as somebody who's not read the books, as somebody who's, again, this is first time experience with the show, I could be wrong, but they were trusting of us, the viewer, to go along with the ride, because when he came on, I felt very, very disorientated with how he was presenting himself. Very different to how we saw him at the end of the last season. But as the episode goes along, it dawned on me over the course of the 45 minutes that it was him in despair of the fact that this image that he's built up of himself over however long has to be thrown away, and he has to embrace the side of himself that he despises again. The man who has to send people off to die, the man who has to make the battle plans, the man who has to kill. When we saw him in that first season, those were things that he was capable of. They were threatened, but really he came across as the man who was wanting to be the statesman, the gentleman, the almost messianic figure. You can trust me, I'll give you sanctuary. And the man who calls the shots from very far away. But here we see that there are many, many, many moments where he's confronted with the notion of being the guy who draws blood again, the man on the front line who has to kill people again. We have the OPA hate him as well. There are factions in the OPA, which was given to us last episode, and they're re-emphasizing it here, of the OPA isn't necessarily just one unified group. There's multiple factions within it, and they all have differences of opinion, but they're working towards a similar thing overall.
It's an alliance.
That's it. It's in the title, the Outer Planetary Alliance. And people don't like Fred Johnson in the OPA. And that, I mean, how did that feel just to get that confirmed? Because with what we were given about Fred Johnson, it was very confusing how he could be such a respected member of the OPA, considering with what he did in the past, you would think that the OPA would hate him the most, that they exist to fight against what he did.
He's the gun that the UN used against Belters. And now he's part of the fold?
You're just an Earther playing Belter. We don't need you giving us orders, and we don't need you picking our targets.
I loved that scene where Fred is getting dressed down by the OPA. They're going through the classic, we hate you. You're
him.
Not only that, he tags that, oh, this guy's a gun right there. I'll make sure that I know that's there so I can make sure he doesn't grab it and shoot me while I do this. He grabs him and smashes his head against the bulk of the ship and then throws him into the airlock and ejects him into space. And everyone stands there and lets it happen and just cower underneath the absolute bossness of Fred Johnson. we have been Fred Johnson fans. We have liked the character because of all of these shades of grey. What did you think about that in this episode where they're really playing around with the morality of his character, and can he keep it if he has to go back into the old way of being? Because he has that conversation with his right-hand woman about how he has to lie and manipulate and let people die.
I really enjoyed his line on the ship, and it annoys me that I can't remember it exactly, but how he's just like, she's like, everybody here is a volunteer, and he's just like, yeah, that was the best way to do it, to make it think that it was their choice.
Christian wants to talk to Fred Johnson. She needs to talk to him. This is an act of treason to talk to him because he holds certain pieces of information that is valuable. And when we cut over to Fred Johnson to see him using similar tactics to what she uses, helps to strengthen why her storyline exists in tandem to the others, because she's all the way over there on Earth. You can say that the Earth stuff feels very isolated and adjacent, but they keep finding ways to thematically tie them together and plot-wise tie them together. Yeah, she's learning about Fred Johnson. Fred Johnson also has a plot in this episode, so that works on that literal level. But the mirroring of these two characters and how one of them is far more comfortable and one of them is very uncomfortable, having to do very similar things. The crew of the Rossi make it back to Tycho Station. They drop off some of those people that they saved. Alex is very much caring for them a little bit too much. He's sticking his nose where it doesn't need to be. And they meet up with Fred Johnson, and he is very pissed off at them, barking at them, trying to make them serve, even though they aren't soldiers for him. And it really turned around for me, and I thought this was a brilliant piece of acting. When they give him the footage and the information about Eros Station and what happened there, and that it was not what the news is telling you, but it was a weapon, and that this is a genocide, an active genocide, the look on Johnson's face of horror, of absolute despair, with that realization of, oh, it's happening again. They're doing it again. Earth is fucking over the little guy, and this is the worst way they could ever do it. It helped strengthen his character in the episode. Just that expression of, oh my God. Instead of reacting to, oh, I'm angry, we've got to do the mission and strike back, they took a moment to actually let the gravity of what Earth is doing just wash over the character, as it should. Don't you agree?
Yes.
So what's the mission? They have to strike back against what Earth is doing. So what does the gang get up to?
They have, as we knew, figured out where this information is being streamed to. They've watched all the cameras being set up. That was the whole thing. And now they're like, we're going to go where it's being sent to and try and figure out sort of what's happening, why is it happening, can we stop it? And then they discover that at this station, which name I cannot remember right now, at this station there is a stealth ship. So then they have to figure out a way to try and get through, and thus we get some fun scenes with Alex doing practice runs on his little console up in the sort of cockpit area and running through them with Fred. I mean, like, that was your best one yet.
He died a second into it. It was good. And they did it. They set that up and they pay it off later. They set up the maneuver Alex was trying to do and he uses it later and it succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
Simple trick, but it worked on me.
Mm-hmm.
It worked on me. That was one where I actually said, hey, he's using the trick that he learned earlier.
Yep.
Classic screenwriting.
I really like that because it's like, somebody has a line about it, like being tricky. I think it's Holden. When Holden is talking to Naomi, he has a moment of being like, nah, Alex has got this.
The crew of the Rossi team up with Fred Johnson and they coordinate this plan. They have information, Fred has the resources, let's work together. And it was a much better execution of it in this season than last season.
Agreed.
Fred talking to these people and actually abiding by them made sense this time round, rather than last season where he just let Holden do whatever he wants because Holden said so. It lined up. But they even grapple with it on a moral level of working with Fred Johnson. They question if what they're doing is right, because he is still a very infamous and troublesome figure. And for Naomi specifically, they go over her relationship with the OPA and how is this right to bring you back into their grip again?
We do get a little bit more clarity when it comes to Naomi's background. With that conversation with Holden when they're doing all the things with the spanners, and we're getting a little bit of a reminder about how the ship works.
Inventory. They're counting up the ammunition and everything.
Yep. And just doing the admin, which is a nice backdrop to this conversation, where they have the, hey, were you and Amos a thing? And it's just like, he's like my brother. It's just like, oh, okay, that could be in a lot of different things.
Does he know that? Is the thing he says as the jealous boyfriend type.
That's what Holden wants to make sure of. It's like, yeah.
You know he wanted to kill me, right? Yeah, as brothers often do. And as somebody who is married to a person with a very overprotective brother, let me tell you, factual, true, 100%. Rachel's brother did want to kill me at one point, and I survived to tell you the tale of Rachel's brother on the podcast. I liked that scene overall. Yeah. It was good to. I didn't like when I say I like it. It's more I like that we just got some information.
We had it, yeah, and I like the very broad explanation of her history with the OPA that we are given as well. Like, we are just getting a little fill-in of Naomi's backstory in general, like the part with Amos, the part with the OPA. We do not know how old she was, what it was, but the important part of that scene, for me at least, was we know how whatever happened weighs on her.
And it was easy to get sucked into being basically radicalized.
Yep.
And how when you join an organization like the OPA, let's not beat around the bush, a terrorist group, you commit acts and it feels justified, and then the next one feels justified, and it's an even more heinous act, and then at some point or another you either succumb to the moral depravity of it all, like with Anderson Dawes. Obviously, he's a great example. He doesn't care. He has no qualms about it. Hence, he left Julie to die. Something that's also called out in this episode by Miller, straight up to Fred Johnson, where, oh, the OPA care, but at the same time, the OPA will leave each other for dead because it's a dog-eat-dog world. We only care for number one. Even though Julie tried to do the morally right thing, it cost her life and she died. But you fall down that road, or you get where Naomi is, where you realize and you can't justify it, and you have to remove yourself. The conversation really boiled down to giving her a justified reason to be doing this, because last season she was so anti Fred Johnson and the OPA. So why would we have a plot where she's doing it? And instead of justifying it with some really hackney thing about, like, here's multiple storylines where her and Fred Johnson have warmed up to each other. No. It's more about her mentality. It's more about her worldview and being able to see her place in these conflicts, and how saving lives in this instance is more important.
Though I said never again. But this time it's different. After Eros.
Are you scared?
I'm angry.
Alex and Amos went to the bar again. Different bar, but they went to the bar again.
Different bar. Amos is still a dickhead. As soon as we get that close up on Alex when he's just going on his tirade when they're at the bar, I'm like, Amos is gone. Amos is gone. No two ways about it. And then it went on, and then it was still going on, and I'm like, come on, Alex. Come on, Alex. Come on. There you go.
And somebody was there, though.
Yeah.
A woman that Amos paid or set up to, hey, if you go here, you promise to pay, you get some drinks and you get to listen to this guy just yabber on. And is that good? Thumbs up? Okay. Didn't see it, but I liked hearing about that. I like their friendship, Alex and Amos, or this, their bro buddy. You sit 5 feet apart because they're not gay.
They're an acquaintanceship.
Yeah, they're an odd couple, aren't they? Because Amos is emotionally detached and Alex is very emotional.
Yes. Chalk and cheese. Frickin' frack.
Yes, I thought, frickin' frack, sure. I thought you were going to say frictionless for a second then. It made me think of Babylon 5 and those sheets that Sinclair was given in the pilot. Alex is very upset because he got called out in the previous episode for not saving people. And he actually feels about that now. Like, he's actually thinking about it.
And thus he's trying to help the people from Eros that they did manage to save. And he's the one that's caught up in what happens to them and wanting to make sure that they get a good job, and then being upset when at least one of them was confirmed to be on the shuttle that got destroyed.
On the breach pod that got obliterated in the attack to try and get to the station. Oh, God. Yeah, were they the FedEx? I know there's a pod or just a shipping container that's a FedEx. Both of them that had FedEx on it. So it's very amusing that FedEx makes it into the future. It's like in Babylon 5 when Zima made it into the future as a drink. That was just amusing. I like it when certain pieces of science fiction really hedge their bets on what will make it, like in Blade Runner as well, where it was like Pan Am. That was very amusing, and look how that worked out. And then Blade Runner 2049 still doubled down on that, even though they aren't really around. So
no, it's just like, why don't more things do that with Coke? Like, that's already lasted close to 200 years.
Well, Blade Runner got that right, at least.
Something ridiculous. I don't think it is quite 200
What
years.
about Futurama with Pepsi, the next generation?
Yeah, I like that too.
The Pepsi joke. What do you think about this Alex side of the story? I didn't really care for it, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, you're getting some business. You're getting some stuff to do. I didn't really care much. It just felt like they didn't want to overlook the cost of life and their role in letting those deaths happen. Like, I hesitate to phrase it that way, but that's kind of the way that Alex is framing it in his head now, of like, we should have done more. We let those people die because we didn't save them.
And
rather than
himself.
We saved ourselves, which is Amos's perspective.
I give it that classic meme gold star sticker that says you tried. It's not as if this doesn't have merit to it, but it's done in the most it's done in the most quick way.
Yeah, it feels like obligatory in a very specific kind of way.
It's not fleshed out.
No.
It is exactly what you read on the tin. Okay, Alex feels guilty about not saving lives. At the end, he still feels guilty because the ones that he was hoping to help, one of them died. Maybe this will play out more. I hope that this is just a speed bump in the road for Alex as a character, because I have been wanting them to give him more juicy material, and this is the kind of stuff they've regularly given him thus far. Just little things, just a little. Here you go. Just a scrap of a storyline for you. The actor is very good in this role. He's very charismatic. I like the character as a character type, and him being the dad, and that all works, and him being the friend to everyone works, but when they give him like little things, that's it. They're little things.
Speaking of little things that are developing and building up over time, we get the Junior Rock Hopper.
Diego.
Back again, and he's on the little tin can with Miller, and surprise, surprise, Miller throws up again.
I fucking enjoyed Miller so much. He is so much better as being the fish out of water character rather than being the man who knows it all. Oh man, and Thomas Jane is really good at the comedy here, as well as doing the rah-rah, I'm in charge, I'll save your butt. But he's on the breaching pod, and honestly, I feel like such a goober. It took me a little bit of time to realize that was the Rockhopper kid. I was like, was that the Rockhopper kid? I'm sure
his
they'll
accent,
explain.
I swear, has shifted again.
It's thicker.
Yeah, because he's been spending more time with belters.
His uncle died, so now his accent's really thick. He's trying to emulate his uncle. That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
He's become radicalized.
Yes. Thus he's there, and thus he thinks that he's invincible.
That's a funny
shot
thing.
with the shell guns.
Oh yes, when they board the station, he gets shot in the face. I thought he literally died. I was like, oh, that's funny. They brought him back to kill him, and then
I
he
had that moment too.
And then they realize basically it's a paintball gun, basically, and
it's just like, oh, we killed all of them, and they're defenseless.
And the kid wipes off his helmet and he screams out that he's invincible. And if that's going to be his little thing, because we wanted to know this character,
Such
the last time we saw this character, he was floating in the void of space, and we never saw him again, and no other person, only Miller has interacted with him. So when we ended last season, not touching anything with that, we were scratching our heads going, okay, obviously something's going to proceed forward, but how?
Yeah, it's like, don't just do this for no reason.
And instead, they just did it off screen.
Yeah.
You got picked up by some fellow belters and now he's here is basically what I predicted of, I'm sure off screen he'll be swooped up by Fred Johnson's group or the UN or the OPA, and it happened.
Yep.
I don't like it.
Yeah. Clearly they want him around for one reason or another. I hope that it's something interesting, but I do not give a fuck right now.
I don't give a fuck with how they've led him here. I'm not opposed to his relationship with Miller being this very energetic, cocky kid to Miller's beaten down, cynical, but still goofy older man. I'm going to save your butt. No, actually, I'm going to save your butt because you're out of your element. Because Miller he doesn't like space and he throws up and he's weak and he can barely grab his helmet as it floats above his head.
It's out of reach. And like, I particularly like that contrast with the cynicism because it really nicely sets up Miller's attitude for when he kills the evil scientist.
At the very end. And to have Miller be so out of his element, you need a character there who knows what his strength is. Because if this was instead, Miller is in a ship filled with people who don't know him, and yet they have to look at him as the leader of the group, and the story would still present him as they did in the ship where he's throwing up, he can't grab his helmet, he doesn't know the procedures. You would say, why would anyone listen to him? So to give him this fun little back and forth with this kid who does know him, he calls him Star Helix, he calls him a filthy cop, he asks him why he's here, people are hearing this. It helps humanize Miller instead of making him a joke or making him like Holden was in the first season where I asked,
Golden boy,
why would anyone listen to him other than his main character?
Yeah.
Because when they get on the station, he takes control because now he's in his element. Space isn't his element, but being on the ground with a gun, that's what he's good at.
Get this guy out of here. Nothing happens to this guy. Get him out of here. I need these scientists alive, guys.
They get on this station. They had a big battle with the stealth ship. It was well done. It was good. It was impressive. It was done better than the previous stealth ship battle. They showed us the glory shots.
Yeah, and
we got a sense of geography this time.
I was going to say that I had a sense of where everybody was and then the relation of things and the scale of things were much clearer in this particular battle.
But everyone gets onto the station and Miller's group comes across these scientists and they're all hooked up to these VR things and they're too busy in that. And then I like that.
They're non-responsive.
Until Miller disconnects them and then they are in Hulk-like rage. Probably some adrenaline kick. They're not fully with it. And his group of guys just mow down all of them except for one that Miller put in the corner.
That he managed to say. Because he says, corners and doors, that's where they'll get you. Yeah. That was a very good title drop to have.
Miller is really hilarious as a character now because I got a good laugh out of Thomas Jane's not just line delivery, but his body language of, come on, guys. Come on, you're supposed to save one of them. Like, you're not supposed to kill all the scientists.
I need this one alive. Come on.
He's really disappointed in his group that they murdered everyone, basically. He's so disappointed.
Come on, you're OPA, but get your shit together.
And then you cut to that one main guy, and even he looks disappointed in himself. Like, you know what? Daddy Miller has called me out here. Jeez.
Yeah, there's a reason that he's just defaulted to being in charge.
Yeah, he's got his head screwed on straight, that guy.
I thought I was going to be the head honcho.
Just because I'm a big muscly guy doesn't mean I'm a smart guy.
But I thought I would be the top dog.
Miller stumbles across the evil scientist who proudly gives us the information, the exposition, the justification, and his mentality is all about, let me do evil science because it will benefit mankind as a whole. I have no
in context.
Morality doesn't matter. Survival is what matters.
Yeah,
and he doesn't even have an allegiance to who he does the science for.
No.
If you let me do it for you, I don't care. Let me do science. Let me make humanity great. Let us evolve into something else.
It really gave me vibes that I... It really reminded me of the attitude of people who worked with the Nazis to invent the most efficient way of killing the most amount of Jews possible with the least amount of resources. Like, the way to make it the most efficient mass murdering possible.
I thought you were going to reference that there was also a lot of scholarly like people who looked at how the Nazis were trying to give the master race a chance, the whole let's actually do the master race, and try to look at it with merit and try and do if we remove the fascism angle to it all, there's some actual logic here, that bullshit.
Yeah. The people who are like, but the Nazis did give us various scientific advantages.
Let's just bust it open. He gives a very mustache-twirling evil science. I keep saying evil science because that's what it is. It's science, but evil. And I was right. I made predictions. Could you go over what he said and your understanding of what the proto-molecule is all about and why they want it and why they need it?
Treating it as a weapon that has been sent from another galaxy, and it was originally intended for Earth to take over Earth, to reform life on the planet.
And to destroy us.
Yes.
He says they fired the first shot, so we must fire one back, which goes
you don't know that it is. You don't know.
You don't know, and it goes back to the UN and their dilemma. Nobody's really fired any shots, but it feels like they have, so we must fire them back.
They're posturing, so we must posture. But we have to be ready to fire if they fire, but we don't want to fire first, because then we would look like the bad guys, but we don't want to wait for them to fire because we don't want to look weak.
And so the proto-molecule is this alien weapon that was launched here.
Yeah.
And so we have captured it now, and we're studying it, and what has he figured out? And why does this scientist need it so badly? What's the plan, man?
He says a bunch of bullshit, but he's just excited by it. He's excited by the power of it, and he wants to be the one in control. He wants to be the one that saves humanity and doesn't care about how much of humanity he tramples on to get there.
you could test this protomolecule on some bacteria. I don't give a fuck about bacteria and how it affects microbes. I want to see it on people. He wants to do experiments to make it so that we can evolve into a new species.
Beyond our bodies?
He wants it so that we can evolve into a species that can survive anything. Because this has the properties that can make you adapt. Terraform, in a way, like I was saying in our last discussion. Survive the harsh realities of space and gravity.
And it goes back to the very, very first few episodes. I think it might have even been Dulcinea, where it's just like there's these two things that we need and that are rationed in the universe, and that's air and water. And he wants us to evolve beyond the need for those things.
I thought you were going to reference that the Belters are slowly changing. Their bodies are growing in different ways. There are people with longer limbs and bone differences, and that in a way, living in space is making us evolve into something else. And this ties...
Is it evolution or deformities? Is a question that is sort of more justified in bringing up now, because when we got the initial explanation of like, oh, you can always tell a Belter by this way, is you got this thing or you got this thing, or some people
some deformity or some tattoo or some
some variation.
And he, as an antagonist, this scientist, he has two things at least propelling his need to use the proto-molecule. Military might, in terms of we weaponize it so we can strike back, and the intrigue of it, the allure of it.
Protomolecule is proof that we're not alone in the universe, and our ticket out of the limitations that bind us to these pathetic little bubbles of rock and air. If we master it, we can apply it.
Apply it to what?
To everything. We become our own gods.
Everyone in the room, except for one, sees the validity of this madman's point, and that's why I fucking loved Miller in this episode. He doesn't mess around. He just shoots this guy in the head, comes over and shoots him more, because Holden and Johnson are actually siding with the scientist and letting him do what he wants. They're going to let him be.
The Earthers?
The Earthers, one of which is a product of genetic manipulation and splicing and has grown up in a weird political cult. And Fred Johnson, who is this man who thinks that this is a way to strike back. Since the very first scene of this series, the proto-molecule, the blue goo, has been there.
Yep.
It has been the thing hanging over everything as this is what our sci-fi show is going to revolve around.
Question. It's the question at the heart of the show. What is and why is?
And what are people going to do with it? Now we know. What do you think? Or now we know more. What do you think?
My opinion hasn't changed too much since the last time that we got a little bit of information on it. It's just like, okay. Yeah, this thing can be either way. It depends on how you use it. I am also like, what if it was just a pure fucking accident?
I fear it as a thing because... 2 words, I said it once and I'll say it again. Super soldiers. I suffered through the X-Files and the super soldier arc of that, and this is giving me major PTSD flashbacks to it. And And look, is it fair to hold the Expanse to that because the X-Files fumbled the ball? No, it isn't fair. But at the same time, I have seen as have you, a lot of science fiction or fantasy properties take this idea of, blah, we weaponize it. Evil corporation wants to weaponize it. We must get the xenomorph and weaponize it. We must get the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park and weaponize them.
Capitalism is evil in space.
And it can work and can be very, very striking, and it can just hit so well. But it's just something where I'm just tired, man.
It's been done. And other elements of the Expanse, I'm looking at you, Avasalara. Give us hope that the Expanse is going to do something different.
It's just that the evil madman scientist is played so arched and written so arched in a way that's deeply familiar. Thus, I feel very uncomfortable with the state of things when it comes to the proton molecule, because it's not only deeply familiar, but it has been very poorly handled a lot of the time. Prometheus with its black goo, like I said, Alien with the xenomorph, we weaponize the xenomorph, the super soldiers in X-Files. I dread it, but I'm going to give the series a chance, even though it has been a little cheesy here and there with this. I mean, the mad scientist even is Mr. Oh, we are going to skip all those preliminary phases because I want to do it now. Okay, I guess maybe they're going to explore more of why that is the case.
They're gonna do that.
Why there is such an emphasis on needing it done within a time frame. Because that's the thing I don't understand. Why does it need to be rushed to such an extent? Is it just sheer human failing? Is that what they're going to go with?
I feel like there's going to be, like, my intuition, no, not even that, just my pure guess, basically, is that the idea comes from the fact that this has appeared recently, so we need to respond as quickly as possible.
And there's multiple groups that once they know about it will want it.
Yeah. Like we
must work fast.
Yeah, we've got to work fast because we have all of these pressures, and also like he's so like the scientist that is in charge of everything is so driven, as is Julie's dad.
It's hilarious that they end it on this big dramatic sting like, Miller, what the fuck did you do? Instead of, Miller, you did the right fucking thing.
Yeah!
I don't know. Do you think that we're supposed to feel that way?
I do.
Like,
I
you're
do.
supposed to feel
I
like,
think,
Miller, what the fuck did you do?
I think you're meant to be like, I get it, Miller, but you fucked up.
He didn't.
You didn't think... No, I agree. I agree that, like, he wanted revenge for Julie, right? That's the main reason that, like, Miller wanted him dead.
Oh!
And, like, that was the start. And then hearing him go on about the molecule and Eros being, like, just a blip, a nothing. Right?
Yeah, and the guy wanted to just skip all of the steps. He didn't want to do this, work it up. Oh,
no.
Miller was the one who's like, why don't you do it on these bacteria? Well, I don't want to do it on the bacteria. I want to do it on pathetic people.
Yeah, I don't care about its impact on bacteria as like that line does stand out. Thus, I think we've mentioned it a couple of times. But it is... to me, like, well, no, like, realize that Miller's right, and that, yeah, maybe they could have gotten more information and more data from that dude, but there was a risk in keeping him alive that Holden and Johnson weren't acknowledging.
On a scale of Yum being bad and Yum Yum being good, to honor the Yum Yum moment from Star Trek Discovery, what would you rate this episode of The Expanse?
I really don't know where I land on this because it's not good, which technically means that it shouldn't be a Yum Yum.
You don't find this episode good?
Like, it's not... It's average to me. It's doing its job. It's moving everything along. There were a couple of scenes that I really like, but it felt like an episode that was very plot heavy and focused on moving everything a little bit forward. But then I'm like, there was nothing major that I didn't like about it. So it feels weird to give it a yum as well. Like, it's a classic middle of the road for me. And thanks to you making it a binary rating system.
No half yums are allowed. We don't do that. Just for everyone out there listening, we don't do half yums. It's bad or good. What is it?
I don't feel like giving mediocrity a boost, so it's a yum from me. Yum.
This episode is higher rated than the previous one. I don't feel it's better than it, though. We didn't have Draper in it, either. We didn't see her, but I struggle. Because I understand what you're saying, but I had a good time watching the episode.
Fair enough.
And I think it offered a lot to discuss. The Expanse has that in its favor, where the episodes themselves can be what you're going through, where they go through the machinations of serialized storytelling in the modern age of television. But what comes with that is being able to reflect on what you have watched and to actually go over the wealth of material given, not only in terms of information and character beats, but themes. There was a lot of thematic relevance to the episode, lots of weight given to that. And so I give this episode a very solid, reliable, but also mild yum yum.
Yum yum. What is the title of the next episode?
Static.
Ooh.
Episode 3, Season 2. We will not be reading the description or looking at any of it, just the title alone. Static. I have no clue what the episode has within it, nor do you, Rachel, but if you have to make a guess, what are some of your predictions when it comes to the next episode, and or any predictions for the show that have been maybe founded via watching the episode we've just gone over?
I think we're going to get more of the scientist that was saved.
Yes, they did save one, and he was weird.
I think we're going to get more debate / argument / arrogance from the triad of Fred, Jim, and I can't remember Miller's right.
Joe.
I was like, it's a J name, and I wanted
Jim,
to say
Joe, and Fred.
Yep. Jim, Joe, and Fred having debates. I think we're going to get some more of that. I think Avasarala is going to maybe be working on the plan to contact Fred Johnson. I don't know if, like, in the meantime they're going to manage to get that, or if it's going to be her working towards that goal.
I hope that we see more of her newly acquired right-hand man spy.
I liked that he was there in the background of the bar scene and then came over.
Yeah, I hope that's where that story goes, where they give more screen time to him so we can actually see and experience why he is here, rather than, hey, Christian, I did it off screen and here it is now, and thus I'm important. My main thrust when it comes to prediction is what you said. I think we're going to have a debate and a conflict between those three characters, but I think it's going to be focused way more on Miller and Holden disagreeing, because they've been friendly this season at the moment. They've been buddy-buddy, and we need to see them be jerks to one another again. And I think this is going to be where Holden comes in to be Mr. Morally stupid, white knighting Don Quixote about it all.
I think also we're going to get a little bit of the Mars perspective again, because we didn't get it this episode, as I think you mentioned earlier, by the character's name specifically.
Draper wasn't here, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't get any Draper, and I think we'll get a little bit of that now that Earth has made this plan to go to this other station and fuck shit up. I feel like we'll get her perspective and her in the process of like being mobilized for that, maybe.
Oh, I've got another prediction. This is the last prediction. Havelock will not be in the episode. And we'll be happy about it. I was totally wrong with my prediction of this episode. Anderson Dawes didn't turn up. I really thought we were going to get a lot of Anderson Dawes. I still got it in the ballpark of...
dropped.
I got it in the ballpark of the OPA would be involved, but maybe I'm going to make my prediction again. Anderson Dawes will be in the next episode.
You just said that was your last one. Havelock was your last one.
Okay. Anderson Dawes will not be in the next episode because Havelock's not in it.
No.
Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to us get through this particular episode of The Expanse. I hope you all had a good time, and please do not spoil anything for us as we're making our way through. We don't want to hear any of that because, hey, this is our first time watch, and we just want to go in as blind as possible. We haven't read the books, haven't seen the show, know very little about it overall, and it's been a pretty fun ride thus far. If you are not supporting us on Patreon, you're really missing out. You can hear our discussions on The Expanse over there. We release these episodes for our patrons first. So if you're listening to this on the main feed, you can go over to the Patreon and listen to episodes ahead right now. Yes, right now you could go over there, and there's so much more content. We're talking about Star Trek, we're talking about different movie franchises, and we have a group Discord that you get to be a part of where you can communicate and hang out with us and some fellow Yumlings. We're on all of those social medias under yumyumpod or yumyumpodcast. Everything is included in this description of the episode. That also means if you want to contact us directly at an email address, you can do so over at
yumyumpod@gmail.com
or Blue Goo podcast@gmail.com if you want to Blue Goo us. Now, I'm very distressed, Rachel. Not only because everyone should be sharing our podcast around, and I'm distressed that not everyone's doing it. I've had a look at the numbers of everyone who listens, and I've had a look at the internet, and guess what? Doesn't line up. Not everyone is sharing the episodes with all their friends, families, and foes. But what really upsets me is we have the OPA here, and I know we're not on series anymore, but... There's no Gaunt.
Miller got off series.
Yeah.
So...
And the Rockhopper did too. So does that mean the Gaunt Belter will be in the next episode? Hey, real talk. Do you think we'll see him again? He was very prevalent in season 1.
Yeah, I think they're done with him. I would love it, but I'm not banking on it.
there are elements of The Expanse where they haven't carried over
Yes.
things they introduced, and it is surprising. Now, maybe they will because this is a series that goes for 6 seasons, but in the first episode, they made a real emphasis on all these different body types of the Belters, and since then, we've only ever seen just normal, regular folks who just look normal with a neck tattoo. No other people with, made-up deformities that you can see visually, or actors who
The
with
extra prosthetics and
extra
stuff,
prosthetics, or
just-
actors who have gigantism. They've dropped that.
Yep.
And the accents for the Belters, boy, fluctuate all over the place. Hence, the Gaunt Belter is the best because he had the thickest, and he said Dustus.
See you then. Well, voila.